0 Black Blade. It seems to be rather weak if you look at the space values. It has 1 turn preparation time and rather expensive 1 generic, 1 power and 1 fuel cost, which is rather high for a unit with only 50 damage and 60 health. If you look at the other options, at the same price you could play, let's say, Air Strike Fighter, which has similar resource costs and a lot better statistic of 90 damage and 100 health. So what makes this chopper better than this card? To understand that, we would need to look at its abilities. First off, Black Blade has an ability called Underground, which allows it to block army and soldier forces. This immediately allows this card to block land units as well as air units, doubling its effective defensive abilities. Additionally, this card has a stealth mechanic, meaning with attacks it can be blocked unless the blocking force has a stealth, allowing this card to bypass most defensive forces, as well as defend against other stealth units. This card also has a unique mechanic that only this card in set 1 has, which says that put this with your legion if it's in your opening hand. This means that once both players have decided their starting hand and that they want to keep it, the player who has Black Blade on their hand will be able to put this card on the field face down without paying its resource costs, essentially getting a free card on the field. If they go first, they have to wait till their second turn so they can reduce the timers to get this card ready, but if you are the second player to start, when you get your reduction phase, you will have effectively a free ready to attack force on your first play turn, which can be pretty powerful. So this card just went from a fairly expensive unit with rather low stat values to free unit that can do quite a bit of damage on the field. Of course, if you do not get this on your starting hand, this card will be rather expensive to play. However, the other two values more than complement this. To fully understand how powerful these two abilities, let's take a look at the matchup this card will be mostly facing. Let's start with soldier forces. All the soldier forces in set 1 have 70 or less attack. Some of them have stealth mechanics like Mark Rockwell and the Gear 6, which make them rather effective attackers. However, as the Black Blade has stealth, he is able to counter all these cards, including the pesky ninjas. Additionally, during blocking situation, the only card on the set 1 soldier forces that is able to eliminate Black Blade should he block it is the Sergeant Vladimir Orlov with 70 damage. So you can safely block pretty much any soldier force, except the Nameless Soldier with its Deathman effect. If you block Deathman effect unit with any unit that can eliminate it in battle, you will lose the blocking unit, so be careful with that. Just being able to more or less shut out all the soldier forces in the game makes Black Blade immensely useful. Besides this, it can also block army units and drones despite their maximum damage values. Of course, should it block, let's say, the Lion Heavy Tank with 120 attack, the Black Blade would be eliminated, but it would be able to entirely negate this massive 120 damage value, which is really effective in a clutch situation. So do pay attention that all the units with Blitz mechanic will still do damage to the unit blocking. So with Black Blade 60 health, this prototype, for example, would be able to do some anti-damage too, but it would still be able to hinder him. What, however, makes Black Blade invaluable is that there is a rather specific force type that is rather annoying to be dealt with, which is the bomber units. All the bomber units in this game have a mechanic called bombs. Bombs makes a unit unable to block, and they can only damage buildings, territories and leaders. This means that Black Blade is able to block cards like V-Type X and Night Eagle, or even the 101X prototype should the cloak mechanic be removed indefinitely. Just like with the Deadman though, be careful with Phoenix Reaper. While you can block its damage, the EMP effects make so that you will lose the Black Blade if you block this. it's always a good idea to pay attention to card text. Now, this card already has an immense usability value in the game, but if you Fireforge it and increase its health from 60 to 70, you will notice some interesting things start to happen. Let's take a look at the drones, for example. There are two drones. One is air unit, GR Hornet, which you can see has 60 damage, so non-Fireforge version or Blackblade would be eliminated against this card, but the Fireforge one will be surviving this encounter every single time. Same for the ZR0X drone, which has 60 damage, and again, if you wouldn't Fireforge Blackblade, it would be eliminated. It's always worth checking cards' damages when you decide if you want to Fireforge it or not. If you also take a look at the units, especially Wingman, all the Wingman units in this game have 60 or less damage, at least during on set 1. So if you have 70 health on Blackblade, you are able to block all the Wingmen and survive. This of course expands to all the other land units as well. Now let's go some combos. Since I have been mostly focusing on the defensive value of 00 Blackblade, I would like to point out some cards that supplement it quite heavily. The first one I would like to bring out is the Nathan Smith. Nathan Smith is 8 soldier cards that has a unique effect of increasing all the non-soldier forces' health in your legion by 20. If you have just 3 of Nathan Smiths on the field, increasing the Blackblade's health value from 70 if Fireforge to 130, this means that even the hardest hitting non-rank 4 land force, the Leon tank I showed earlier, would be unable to eliminate Blackblade once it's blocking. The rank 4 units, however, would still be able to eliminate Blackblade, even if you play 4 copies of this card and increase the Blackblade's maximum health to a whopping total of 150. When it comes to rank 4 units, it's worth mentioning that Gemini GX, which is one of the easiest to use fast power units, having 100 damage and 40 health, even with Fireforge to 50, would be unable to survive an encounter with Fireforged and Nathan Smith reinforced Blackblade. If you intend to use Nathan Smith in your deck anyways, combining it with Blackblade can create you a rather versatile and possibly one of the best blockers in the game. Additionally, should you want to have Blackblade in your hand to be used for block mechanics, unfortunately the traditional means to doing that, like search algorithm that puts the card on top of your arsenal, or the optimized outcome which directly puts the card in your hand, are unable to let you use its passive mechanic of playing it free. But still, if you want to have a versatile blocker unit in your field, it might be worth searching for it occasionally. Also, Blackblade being an air unit, you can also combo it with check on airspace, which lets you use stretch ability to find a specific air force and put it in your legion. This is essentially a harder to use variant of the Blackblade's own ability, and also something you have to defend, but it's definitely an option if you want to go for that playstyle. Also, being an air unit, Blackblade can be used with carrier units, namely the Revenge Super Carrier, though there are better options for this as well, which I will cover later, but if you already have lost those options in the field, it might be a good idea to remember. You can also add that to this one. Now let's go through some weaknesses of Blackblade. Besides its apparent and low health value, which I already described you can easily increase, Blackblade has a pretty low attack value, meaning it's unable to take out most units. This also becomes a problem since most of the enter cards, as well as the hijack type cards, just as the lever hijack, allow you to take control of a unit with out stealth and attack value less than 100. So while initially Blackblade is protected against these type of cards as it has stealth, but since stealth is fairly easy to remove in this games, with cards like Desert Sandstorm, and it has an attack value less than 100, it's highly vulnerable against being captured and taken over. It's still an expensive thing to do with cards like Clever Hijack or Brainwash here, but it's still possible, so you should keep that in mind. So to sum this all up, 0-0 Blackblade is fairly expensive card to use, with fairly mediocre stats if you just consider its base values. If you however play it using its special ability from your starting hand, you can use it free and it becomes one of the best utility blockers in the game. Its anti-ground ability allows it to block and survive against almost all soldier forces outside the Nemesis soldier, who has Deadman mechanic, and Sergeant Vladimir Orlov, who has 70 damage. It's also able to block and stall with pretty much all the land and air units on the game, including the chief forces. Its stealth ability allows it to block all the stealth units, both land and air, as well as stall all the bombers besides Reaper indefinitely, making it one of the most effective ways to counter bombers early game. Additionally, once you Fireforge it, it will be able to counter all the drones outside the Navy ones, and it will be able to survive all the wingmans in the game, which are rapid power units combined with carrier units, which I will cover later. Generally, I'd rate Blackblade pretty highly. I definitely recommend using it if you want to use a deck with some versatility against all unit types, and you don't mind sacrificing it. Also, if you know you are going to play against soldier user, who is someone who, let's say, plays generally, you definitely want to use Blackblade. It's a nifty sideboard card as well, if you want to use it that way. Overall, Blackblade is definitely a Fireforge worthy card, and I recommend considering using it on your decks if you go for a force heavy approach and want that maximum impact early on. Do pay attention for its resource cost, it can get really heavy if you don't plan for it.